Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Naveen, and in today's video, we're going to be going over DMG Blockchain, which is another interesting cryptocurrency mining stock that I currently am invested in. Now, I actually got in based off of some of the technicals surrounding this particular company, but I never really took the time to go over some of the fundamentals. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over a little bit of that. I'll explain what this company does, and then I'll go over some of the current catalysts that are there for DMG blockchain, and then I'll go over any future prospects moving forward. Now, this was also suggested by one of my subscribers, so shout out to them for requesting this to cover. I definitely think this is a good stock to cover, especially with the price action recently. It's been dipping quite a bit, so it's been forcing me to actually think about this company, whether I really want to keep invested long term, and is this one of my higher conviction plays going forward. So just a little bit about DMG Blockchain. They are a cryptocurrency company, but they are divided up into three main businesses or categories. So they are a little bit diversified in that manner. Like most companies, they do mine their own Bitcoin, but what's interesting is that they do have a different side of their operations where they host mining operations for other cryptocurrency companies like Mara and Argo, for example. So that was interesting to me personally as an investor. I don't really have any other stocks doing that kind of thing, so it was nice to actually get some exposure in that kind of way. Apart from that, they also do data analytics and forensics, so kind of similar to what Big Digital does. They are trying to diversify themselves, not just be strictly a miner or anything like that. They are involved in the compliance side of things when it comes to cryptocurrencies. They do have technical experience with software products such as their Blockseer pool technology. They also have got mine managers and their wallet score software as well. And all of these allow them to work with auditors, law firms, and law enforcement, all these different organizations that would benefit from compliance in the cryptocurrency space. So that's interesting. Another way to kind of diversify their operations, which is always a good thing. And lastly, their last sort of division for this particular company is developing enterprise blockchains. So that's another interesting thing. I think they're doing something with the cannabis space where they're sort of developing software that allows them to track the product supply chain through the blockchain. So that's also an interesting aspect of what they're trying to do. I do think the meat or the bread and butter of their sort of business is surrounding the Bitcoin mining and the hosting services, but it's interesting to see that they are sort of diversified in this aspect. So now that I've sort of broken down what they do, I'm just going to go over some catalysts that I'm currently looking at or that I'm looking forward to. Things that as an investor caught my eye and things that are going to be positive for them moving forward. So the first thing is their DCMNA pool. Now, this pool is actually part of an agreement with Marathon Digital Holdings, which is a pretty big name in this space. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this particular company. And this particular pool is aiming to be the first North American Bitcoin mining pool that's fully compliant with US regulations. So that's really good. That's really interesting. It's doing, again, similar things to what Big Digital and Netcoins is doing with their whole compliance thing. So I do think that this sort of regulation in this space is definitely coming eventually, and this is only going to be a positive for them moving forward. They're going to be licensing their Blockseer pool technology, again, to sort of lead the way in terms of compliance, make sure that they're OFAC compliant, and, avoid any anti-money laundering sort of issues and stuff like that. So as part of this deal, DMG actually receives 500,000 shares of Mara, and they're also getting paid monthly as part of a license fee. So it's good to see that they're getting this steady revenue, steady income from this particular service that they're offering. Now, over time, Marathon intends to direct 100% of its hash rate to this new mining pool, with all 100,000 or so miners to be deployed by the first quarter of 2022. And they are looking to expand to accept other mining operations as well. So it won't be just Mara that's going to be in the DCMNA pool. If other miners are interested in a pool that is focused on compliance and regulation, this is the one to choose. And depending on how these other miners view this, this could be another potential for a catalyst for this company moving forward if we get some more news about other companies wanting to jump into this pool. Now, the next pool I'm going to be talking about is Terrapool. Now, the main difference between this pool and the previous one that I talked about is that Terrapool is focused on clean energy and stuff like that, and they're partnered with Argo, another big name in this cryptocurrency space. So you got these two different pools here. One is focused on regulations and compliance. The second one is focused on green energy and clean energy, sustainable energy. And so that's pretty interesting, especially with all the talk recently about Bitcoin being clean and trying to find clean ways to produce Bitcoin. This is definitely going to be on a lot of people's radars, a lot of miners' radars. So, I can only see other miners starting to adopt this particular service. I can see miners adopting both services. And it should be pretty good news if something were to come out where, say, another company were to want to get involved with this. I think that's going to be another catalyst for this company moving forward. Next, I'm going to be talking about immersion cooling. So one of the ways in which they want to move from the conventional ways of energy towards something that's a little bit more efficient. And in this case, immersion cooling, which basically uses liquid instead of air to cool their different mining rigs, that would actually help to reduce any sort of cost by about 30%. So that's a 30% increase in efficiency just by going through this immersion cooling method. Now, not a lot of people are actually using this immersion cooling method at the moment, and actually they're currently testing out this method. So it's hard to say how that's going to turn out. Definitely a little bit of risk to see what's going to happen with this, but they do say that this particular method is not too hard to retrofit to their current setup because they're not really tearing everything apart. They do have some framework that they are reusing to run this setup. But like I said, it's currently still in production. We're still trying to see how this goes. They're retrofitting the first 30 megawatts of infrastructure to immersion cooling. We're going to see how that goes. If that goes well, we'll probably hear some good news about that, another potential catalyst. And if it goes well, they'll probably continue to complete the second half of their megawatts infrastructure in the second half of 2021. So we'll see how that goes. It could be a pretty big deal, 30% efficiency, that's pretty big. And offering that as part of your pool, I can see that being something that's attractive to other miners, for example, who want to use immersion cooling without having to actually set up this whole thing themselves. So everything's all set up. You just got to join DMG Blockchain to be part of this green mining pool. So interesting stuff all around. So next I'm going to be talking about recent stock offerings and stuff like that, because personally for me, that tends to give me a good idea of where this company values itself and if it tends to be trading at a discount. So when I look at some of the previous stock offerings, I know they had a private placement recently that was about $2.50 Canadian. Currently, the stock is sitting below $2. So right there, you're getting it at a price that is cheaper than what institutional investors would have paid for, at a great discount, actually. And when you look at some of the other stock offerings that happened recently, they recently granted 200,000 stock options with an exercise price of $250 again to one of their board members for a period of 3 years. They also offered one of their PR companies, I believe, that they're working with, Core IR, up to 200,000 common shares of DMG at a price of $3 this time. So, you can see already, like, just at a price of under $2 and seeing all these price offerings sitting at around the 250 mark, to me, that looks like a little sign. It's not everything, but it's definitely a sign that, the price might be trading at a discount. Something to look into, definitely, for sure. And something that's definitely a catalyst moving forward. I think, just looking at all the crypto stocks recently, they've all been having a dip. I don't think it's necessarily related to DMG itself. And I think over time, a lot of these crypto stocks are going to pump again. So I think currently the current price of below $2 is definitely undervalued, definitely good value there. Now, lastly, they do have a decent amount of Bitcoin on their treasury. Not as much as some of the other miners, but 220 Bitcoin, you can't complain with that. And I know that they're trying to move towards building that treasury of Bitcoin, not only selling it, but trying to HODL for the long term, and they're trying to take more steps towards, acquiring Bitcoin. I think they've mentioned in some of their releases that they were willing to, acquire Bitcoin through a direct investment or stuff like that. So as always, if a company like this is willing to hold their Bitcoin moving forward for the long term, it's always a good sign to see. So let's take a look at some of the future prospects or even some of the concerns that you might have as an investor in this company. Now, I just created a list here of different things that I took note of when I was trying to look into this company, and one of them was determining what their emphasis was on, for example, self-mining versus hosting, and how do they determine how they're going to divide up their resources into one or the other. Basically, how do they determine what is higher priority or what's not, etc. So that's an interesting question to ask. Next is the whole immersion cooling technology. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they're still in the process of sort of testing and retrofitting this whole thing within their infrastructure and facilities and stuff like that. But I do wonder whether this is going to be successful or not. Obviously, time will tell. If it does, it could lead to up to 30% efficiency savings, which is amazing. And I'm sure other companies would want to join into their pool if that was the case. So yeah, that's the biggest risk for me, just seeing how that pans out. Another thing for me that was a little bit concerning, or something that they could improve upon, would be their marketing department. They don't do a huge amount of marketing when you compare them to some of the other companies, like for example, an Argo or a Hut 8. I think those would be the ideal setup. Definitely an area of improvement for this company. I think if they can improve their social media presence and just get more information out there, that would help for a lot of the investor confidence within this company. Hopefully they can ramp that up a little bit. Now, speaking of which, they actually have set up a conference call for investors this Thursday, actually. So that's definitely a good thing. I'm sure a lot of investors probably saw the price tanking recently, and they probably set this up as a way to reassure investors that everything's going to be okay, that, there's no reason to exit and stuff like that. So I'm definitely curious to see how they respond to all this that's been going on and any questions that investors might have. And actually, there's a really interesting post that was posted on StockTwits by Tantric Man, and he has his own questions about what people could possibly ask at this conference meeting. And I thought they were pretty good questions here. Some of them being, for example, insider selling. Why are a couple of directors, Adrian Glover and Justin Rasek, selling large numbers of shares while the stock price is so low? That's a good question to ask, definitely. I don't know too much about it, but that does raise some flags for sure. Transparency. They need to publish their self-mining hash rate and Bitcoins mined aligned to what their competitors do. Definitely, they need more transparency. They need to share more of their stuff with their shareholders. I'd love to see a lot of that information. Strategic and future guidance. What are the realistic probabilities of reaching their self-mining targets? Are there realistic plans to scale beyond 2021? What are the possibilities of a merger being acquired? Again, all great questions. There's a lot of question marks on the company's goals going forward, and how they are strategizing their operations moving forward. So these are definitely really interesting and useful questions to be asking. Hopefully they're addressed at the meeting coming up. Oh, and there's just another question here about capital, if they're trying to increase shareholder value and take actions to get access to large liquidity markets. So, uplisting and stuff like that. Obviously those are great questions. Hopefully people are going to be submitting some of these questions, and we'll get some more answers on some of this stuff. So just to summarize, for me, I think there's a lot of potential catalysts if they're able to successfully execute on some of this stuff that they're doing. Now, personally, for me, I think this is a company that has a little bit more risk involved because of all the things that they're testing out, and we're sort of waiting on things to happen. But there is also a lot of potential reward with this company, especially at the current share price below $2 at the moment. So that gives me an idea of how I'm going to be moving forward with my own personal strategy of investing in these companies, and whether I want to be investing in this company or if I want to be investing in one of my more higher conviction plays. So as always, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and let me know what you guys think about some of the stuff that I said in this video. I'd be curious to know if there's anything I missed or any other points that are important for DMG moving forward. I definitely want to learn more about this company and definitely want to see how this plays out for sure. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Have a good day, guys. See ya.